Welcome to the Sustainable Travel Podcast. I'm Emma, your host from That Travel, and today I'm here with Connie Needham, an anthrozoologist, ethical wildlife enthusiast, and founder of Project Wild. Super excited to be here with you, Connie.
I'm super excited for you to have me.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. So anthrozoologist, as we were just saying, not a common term. So can you tell us a little bit about you, who you are, and how you got started on your journey?
Absolutely. So my background is actually mostly in wildlife rescue and rehab. I essentially, during my time in university, thought, what am I doing with my life? And had, I think, the classic crisis so many of us have, and ended up dropping out. I traveled to South Africa and volunteered on an African elephant research unit and just found my passion and my love for wildlife and research and human-animal relationships. So since then, I went back to university. I have my undergraduate degree in psychology, specializing in animal behavior, and one in philosophy as well. I, from there, spent a lot of time working in wildlife rescue centers with all different kinds of species, but mostly primates. I am absolutely obsessed with monkeys, as you know very well.
I do.
Yeah. And when I left my last position at a sanctuary, I did my master's degree in anthrozoology, which is essentially the study of human-animal relationships. It's all about how we coexist with other species, what we can learn about ourselves from other species, and also just ways that they change and impact how we live our day-to-day lives.
Yeah.
So it was fascinating, beautiful, and I've been traveling ever since and learning everything I can about our relationship with animals and how we can improve it and just make the world a better place for them.
I love that. I think we hear this phrase like coexisting with nature quite a lot, but
Mhm.
at the moment it's not happening, like humans are not coexisting with animals. And it's something that I think more and more I find it so bizarre because I know how many people on this planet love animals and they want them to thrive. So it's a really important topic. It's something that I really want to dive into. Obviously, on this podcast, we interview a range of different travelers from different backgrounds and see what sustainable travel means to them. And for you, it definitely focuses, as I know, on like wildlife conservation experiences, wildlife encounters. Would you say that's right?
Yes, definitely. If anyone ever asks me why I travel, it's because I want to go see and learn about an animal.
No matter what the animal is, you're going for the animal.
Literally.
Yeah, and I think that's true for a lot of people. Like I know for Murray, for my husband, like he whenever we go away, he's like, "What wildlife can we see? Like, is there a way that we can see some kind of wildlife?" And I'm like, "Yeah, like let's have a look." But it's so difficult these days. Like you and I have talked about this before. It's not easy to find the right experience, even when, as you and I do, you know what to look out for. So can you talk us through a few of those issues? Like why is it hard? Like what comes up? What are the problems that we have in wildlife tourism at the moment?
Absolutely. I mean, I want to start by saying, obviously, wildlife tourism, I think, is an incredible industry. I think it's such a beautiful way for so many people to learn about and connect with animals that generally we're only ever going to see through a screen. And
Yeah.
it's also a great opportunity to support wildlife. And, as I say, it's my driving force for travel. So I love the wildlife tourism industry,
Yeah.
but it has a massive problem with what is called ethics washing. And this is obviously something me and you have spoken about a lot in the past. And ethics washing, in a nutshell, is when facilities will mislead consumers into believing what they're doing is more ethical than it actually is. And the ethics washing in the animal tourism industry thrives not on people not caring or having any ill intent when they travel to see wildlife. It thrives on the fact that education about what is good for animals and wildlife behavior and things like that is not accessible. So a lot of people don't realize that if they go to a facility that says, hey, we're going to ride or bathe an elephant, and what we're doing is actually really good for them because we're checking them over for injuries or we're enriching their lives, whatever, they don't have the knowledge to say, actually, that seems like it would harm the animals.
Yeah.
All they really have is the big media, the beautiful imagery of people touching, sitting on, interacting with animals, and it looking engaging and amazing. And of course, feeling connected to an animal is amazing, and it's what we all go there to do and what we all strive to do.
Mm.
And then people within the wildlife tourism industry, they can feed on that desire for our connection by allowing us or promoting us taking part in activities that are actually harmful to wildlife.
Yeah, I call it the Snow White effect. I think it's like not helped at all by the fact that we have these big influencers who, again, like I'm not blaming them. They don't know any better. They just know that this facility told them we're really ethical. We help this tiger by like what do you call it? Like acclimatizing it to humans, and then like by that, like there's all these things that they say. And the influencers doesn't know any better. They go to the facility, they post about it, and then it creates this like Snow White effect of people are like, well, I want to touch that tiger. I want to like see that elephant. I want to be surrounded by beautiful birds. But as you say, it's not ethical. Can you explain why?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the key really is in the term wildlife. These are wild animals. They don't belong in domestic environments. They aren't naturally, their natural behaviors and dispositions aren't for people to be close to them, to be touching them, to be sitting with them. In order for that to happen, there needs to be a certain amount of training, a certain amount of control, an element of changing that animal's natural behaviors in order for them to fit into the environment where they're doing what humans want them to do.
Mm.
And that is not a process that is in any way pleasant for an animal. You know, a lot of the time it involves some very cruel training methods. It can involve a lot of exploitation, a lack of autonomy, so that animal is no longer able to make choices about what they want to do or how close they want to be with people.
Mm.
And all of that is very easily hidden in the wildlife tourism industry. You know, you don't see the process of getting an animal to a stage where you can be near them.
Yeah.
You don't see the control that's happening behind the scenes to try and make sure that animal doesn't hurt you. You just see, oh, I'm touching this animal and I'm being told they like it and it's good for them.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you aren't necessarily taught to look for the more subtle signs that there's more going on, of course you're going to miss them because they don't want you to see them.
Right, exactly. We're not wildlife experts. A lot of this training, I guess you could call it a form of domestication, and
Mhm.
therefore they're not that wild anymore if they're being trained to be around humans. Um, and for us, like we don't know the signs and symbols to look out for when it's like, oh, this elephant isn't enjoying it. Well, how would we know? It's standing there, it's accepting the food, it's like waving its little trunk or like any of these things that are happening, like we can't possibly know that. So we have to go by what the facility is telling us. And as you say, ethics washing. Um, I think it's important to tie that back as well, I think, to greenwashing. Like a lot of the time, the people who get hit the most with greenwashing are the people who really want to be doing something sustainable, right? They want to be like, they're looking out for these signs. They see, oh, you're really sustainable, you recycle all of your cartons, and like they think, great, I'll invest in you. Unfortunately, the companies know that, whether or not they always mean to cause harm with it, and you are the people that they prey on, per se. Could we talk a little bit before we come on to the next question about smaller sanctuaries that don't necessarily have all of the information they need or perhaps are led by tourist behavior? You know where I'm going with that and what they like how it's not necessarily their fault.
It's really difficult because as with any industry in the world, there's an element of supply and demand. And the conservation and rescue and rehab industries, they're exceptionally underfunded.
Mm.
So particularly smaller facilities, they're trying to find this way to balance welfare and profit.
Yeah.
Now you get the clearly very exploitative facilities that, you know, for them, profit is all the way up here and welfare is
Yeah.
not even a consideration. You get the facilities that are super lucky to have angel investors or massive backers where they don't even have to worry about profit, so welfare is absolutely everything. And then you get these smaller facilities that have to fall somewhere in the middle. And in order for them to exist and to make an impact and to do some good work, they have to figure out how are we going to support ourselves? How
Yeah.
are we going to get people to want to visit us? How are we going to get people to want to donate to us? And I honestly think in a lot of donation and visit, there is always an element of sacrificing animal welfare. I don't think there's a way in which it is done 100% beautifully and perfectly in every whatsoever, because like I said, these animals ideally won't really be around us.
Mm.
What we really have to keep in mind is, we'll go on to talk about some things that are blatantly red flags of absolutely just avoid, do not do these things. But otherwise, ethics exist within shades of gray. They have a lot of, personal interpretation of things, and you really have to sit and think and maybe listen to some of the things we're going to discuss in this podcast and decide what is your limitation? Where do you stand on what you can and cannot support? And
Mm.
it's hard to be 100% right in that. You want to support people who are trying their best and try and push them in the right direction by, taking part in the things they do that you do like and you do appreciate and you want them to do more of.
100%. I kind of asked that question and prompted you to that because really recently, actually, I did a reel that was talking about times where I have, made mistakes, I suppose, and like gone to facilities that upon reflection were not acting in the most ethical way for the animals. Realized at the time, I fed back, and then this reel I posted was trying to kind of let people know, destigmatize in a way, like let them know that it's okay. It obviously prevention's better than cure, but we make mistakes. And someone had
Mhm.
made this comment saying, I think you should name the facilities, whether they're small or not. It's not an excuse to be unethical, and another ethical facility could be missing out. And I've heard you speak about this as you did there very eloquently, and the point being, I think that we can't be perfect, and especially if a small facility is trying to do their best for the animals and is open to learning, maybe the best we can do as consumers is give feedback and try and help them.
Absolutely. And I've been in very similar situations myself. It's my job to research the ethics of places and to go and assess these ethics and things, but I still have come to places and been surprised by something that's been on offer, been like, oh, I don't agree with this.
Yeah.
And like you say, every time my approach has been to offer feedback, and so many times people have responded and been like, thank you for letting us know about this. And I have actually seen improvements in facilities over time. And that's got to be the goal, right?
Yeah.
That as we say, with the funding issues, we kind of have to support each other. It's very easy to have a lot of blame and a lot of negativity within this industry and a lot of competition as well, because you're competing for fundings and things like that. And I just feel like we can see more positive change when we're trying to uplift and support and bring about more of the positive rather than always harping on the negative.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you say, that's the best case scenario is that they improve. Whereas if we shame them or call them out online, they're probably going to be quite resistant to listening to us in particular, because
Absolutely.
it's not nice. Like, and we haven't. We also must remember that there are people, particularly the two that I was talking about in that reel, were from low income countries. If that facility suddenly has to shut down because no one's visiting anymore, people lose their jobs. Like it's quite a big deal.
It's a huge deal. And it's, like with any important issue in the world, for example, I've been vegan for over 10 years now. If I wanted to talk to someone about veganism and my approach was to point out what they're doing that I think is really bad and terrible and attack it, like they're not going to listen to any of the
No.
positives I have to say because all I've done is come and attack them and put them on defense mode and made the whole conversation feel sour, to approach things with a bit of a positives, picking out what was good and how that could be better and why you would prefer that to the things you disagree with. And it's
Hmm.
just better feelings all around. I think it's more likely to lead to positive change.
Absolutely. If people are changing because they're ashamed, it's not going to stick. Like it's just
No.
going to revert to guilty behaviors after a while. And the other thing that this person was saying was that we should make it easy for tourists to choose the right place, which in a way I agree with. But that's why I think we need to be really clear on what these kind of red flags are, which we'll come to later.
Yeah.
Um, so anyway, we are here to talk about why you should be supporting sanctuaries, not why you shouldn't. So when we have why should we do that? When we have these sanctuaries that are really trying to do the right thing, there's a lot of people who believe we shouldn't engage in wildlife tourism or animal tourism at all. But I know that your stance on that is that that's wrong. So yeah, why? Why should we support these facilities?
I mean, I completely understand people who see exploitation and ethics washing and a lack of transparency and think, I want absolutely nothing to do with that because it's terrible. You don't want to accidentally be supporting something that you don't believe in.
Yeah.
My problem with that, we look at it this way, let's say there are facilities out there that are exploiting their animals by creating really fun and attractive activities that are at the animal's expense. And then there are facilities that are creating less flashy, less like conventionally exciting, perhaps looking activities, but that are actually educating people and looking after the animals. And then you have, say, two groups of people. You have a group that, not that they don't care about animals, but they maybe don't have access to or just not engaged in conversations about ethics, and they don't understand the ethical difference between these two facilities.
Mm.
They're most likely going to go for the flashy one, the one that's promising them all these big activities and all this fun stuff. And those facilities are therefore going to be funded and supported by these people.
Mm.
And then you have another group who are engaged in these conversations and really want to be making a difference. If what they do is just remove themselves from the conversation, the
Yeah.
support remains for the unethical facilities. The ones that are suffering are the ones who are trying to promote activities that maybe the average person who doesn't understand doesn't so much want to take part in, or doesn't see the value in the same way. So by just removing yourself from the conversation, I feel really the status quo stays the same.
Mm.
Whereas if you can add your voice back into supporting and uplifting what you want to be seeing and creating the environment for these animals you want to be seeing, that's such a more powerful move in a way
Yeah.
than just saying, well, I'm having nothing to do with it at all.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when we have these people who say, I don't believe in like wildlife tourism, I don't believe in animal tourism, often they are the people who've actually looked, they've taken step one and gone and had a
Exactly.
look and found out, oh, there's all these unethical things going on, and like and what they've done after that is gone, I don't want to know. I'm going to cover my ears. I'm not going to listen. I don't want to know any of that stuff because I don't know what's right and what's wrong. And I wouldn't necessarily call it lazy because it is overwhelming. There's a lot, and it's very difficult to find out where are the resources, like where can we find the
Mhm.
correct information, which is why we're making this podcast, among other things. But I would say to those people, like, push through that, like, push past that, try to research, try to find the information, try to support those facilities because, as you say, the other ones are still going to receive support. And it's kind of like, when we say if you choose to be neutral, you're taking the side of the oppressor. It's almost that.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like you say, it makes a lot of sense that when you get that information, you enter into almost a fight or flight mode. And the flight is to say, I don't want anything to do with this. This is too much. And you really have to push through to the fight. And it's not even just about, supporting the ethical versus the unethical. It's also being involved in conservation as a whole.
Yeah.
Because as we say, it's an exceptionally underfunded industry. Funding in situ conservation, which essentially means, wildlife work that's happening within the country that the animal is present, is so, so important because so much of the protection and the education that is needed to protect this wildlife is a community-based effort.
Mm.
And while it's amazing to be giving to larger international organizations, the amount of money that trickles down into in situ conservation is a lot lower. Whereas if you can directly visit and support and help to fund real community-based smaller projects, the effect that that can have both on you and on them is huge. You can learn so much from talking to people on the ground, really doing this work who understand the community, who understand the environment, the people with whom this conflict with these animals are happening. You can learn so much from them.
Mhm.
And funding going directly to them can have such a massive community effect in actually tackling the root causes of why these animals are here and helping the people in that area understand their value and having better relationships with them as well. So it's multifaceted. There are so many beautiful things everyone can get from coming together in a community environment to support wildlife.
Yeah, definitely. I think, I mean, we had a podcast quite a while ago now when we're releasing this one with Tanaya from Eco Girl Africa. And some of what we were talking about, it was quite sad. Like as someone who's visited like various parts of Africa multiple times, to hear she was saying like African tourism is not for Africans. Like it's not accessible for Africans. We can't afford it. Like people come and they want to go to these national parks, see our wildlife, and very little of that goes back to the communities. And maybe this is the answer. It's like investing in these small sanctuaries that are run by locals trying to understand their wildlife, trying to love their wildlife, so they can coexist.
Yeah, definitely. And because there's such an issue with what is called fortress conservation, where essentially you remove local communities from the area in which the wildlife exists in order to try and protect the wildlife. And then, yeah, it does. It just becomes about people who can afford to access that area get to learn about that wildlife and get to experience it. And it just excludes the communities who actually know the most and have the most potential and impact in this conservation conversation. They're just taken out of it.
Yeah.
And that's really sad.
So fortress conservation, that's called. Not heard that term.
Fortress conservation, yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting as well, and something that I've, without knowing the term, been quite passionate about because I think as well it can breed this real like sort of not distrust, but like resentment, I guess, from the local communities, like for the wildlife. Like I know that in Uganda it was a bit of an issue with the gorillas because local people were trying to like make money from mining the minerals in Burundi. And I don't know, but I can imagine from their perspective, it must be so frustrating of like, I can't make money because you're trying to protect this like non-human thing, like that doesn't affect
Yeah.
me. Like, it's not good.
It feels like there's a priority in which humans are being placed a lot lower. And,
Yeah.
you know, generally in a lot of aspects of the world, it's the opposite in that humans are placed a lot higher. But what we need is more of an even footing.
hmm Yeah, and maybe that comes from empowering well, I know this comes from empowering the locals to be able to do this themselves, to care, to want to like protect and conserve their natural environments because they're amazing in most cases. Um,
Yeah.
I really like that. Okay, so if we can come on to what exactly should people be looking out for to make sure that the sanctuary or experience that they're looking at is ethical, green flags.
Yes. So there's obviously conversation with like green flags, red flags. From my perspective, like the easiest to identify and the most basic really come hand in hand. So I'm kind of going to do like a red flag and its associated green flag, if that
Okay.
makes sense. For me, one of the biggest warning signs that a facility is potentially prioritizing profit over welfare is the kinds of activities they're offering is hands-on physical contact with wildlife.
Mhm,
There's really no situation in which a tourist who is visiting a facility for a day should be touching the animals in that facility.
mhm,
It's obviously very different if you're working there. If you're volunteering more long term, then there are different gray areas and situations where that might be okay.
mhm.
Otherwise, your hands really just should be kept to yourself, both for your safety. You know, wild animals, we cannot always predict their behavior. They can be dangerous. There is a risk of what is called zoonotic disease transmission, which is just diseases that can be passed between humans and non-human animals. And it's just can be very distressing to have people that close.
Yeah.
So if a facility is saying, hey, come and pet our animals, red flag, associated green flag, the kinds of activities in which they're offering are observation based. They're based on getting involved in things behind the scenes of the facility. For example, I've been to some where you can help make enrichment and then watch it be delivered to the animals and learn about the importance of that and see them play with the things that you've made. That's really, really
Oh,
cool.
cool.
Yeah, that's actually my when I started getting into animal behavior, enrichment was my jam. That's what I love doing. So
Yeah.
I think that's such a cool way to get tourists involved in things.
So if
And
you don't mind, can I unpack that one a little bit? I know you've got loads to go through, but I'm gonna like unpack them all. If that's all right.
I would love
So
to.
So when we're talking about like obviously hands-on, you said it can be dangerous. I think that's something people struggle with, honestly. I think people struggle with this concept that it can be dangerous. I think they look at it like, well, I'm in a facility, I'm protected. Like, I don't know why you think this is dangerous for me. And I'm sure you have a lot that you can explain to this, but I would compare it to I just got a rescue dog, as you know, and it's my first dog. And I've been looking into all of these like dog behavioral things that, we as humans have been learning over the years that we've domesticated them. And there are things that I have been petting dogs for my entire life that I didn't
Mhm.
realize could be warnings of like stress in dogs.
Yeah.
And then, you know, a lot of the sites say like often dogs can suddenly turn and bite, and families have no idea. They think it's like come out of the blue. And it's because we just don't know these signs to look for in dogs. So what I would say to that is amplify that by a gazillion for all of the things that you don't know about wildlife.
Yeah. And you know what? It's also even, it's like people. We can have bad days.
Yeah.
I can personally say when I am PMSing and mad at the world, I will say, do, and lash out in ways that maybe I wouldn't normally. And people who know me might not always predict that I'm going to react to a joke in the way that I do because I'm just in a different mental space that day.
Yeah.
This is not something that happens just for humans. This is all different species, you know?
Yeah.
Like you say, we don't always understand each other. We miss cues for things. We can't always realize that something else has happened that day that's maybe stressed or upset the animal that has put them in a more fragile state than usual.
Mhm.
There's so many different things that could just cause a behavior that isn't, typical of that animal or that situation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when it comes to, you know, petting and touching animals, as you said, there are
Mhm.
some great alternatives when it comes to observation. So yeah, I'll let you move on.
Next for me, biggest red flag, I think this is one you're very passionate about, is that sightings are guaranteed of animals. So obviously this is a little bit different if you're in a very small facility with some type of animal that's like, actually, honestly, I can't think of many situations in which an animal in a good facility shouldn't have the option to be in a part of their enclosure or space where they can't be seen. Because animals should always have the option to seek shelter. They
Mhm.
should always have the option to feel protected, to feel hidden. And if you're guaranteeing sightings, you're taking that choice away from them. And you're doing that in a few ways. You're either baiting them,
Yeah.
and so, luring them out to humans, and that can be damaging in so many ways and very stressful in so many ways when they take the bait and realize now they're exposed,
Mhm.
or you're following them around all day, giving them no privacy, no time to themselves. Or
Mhm.
instead, you've just actually not given them the option of any space in which they can feel covered and protected. And that's devastating for them. That's so stressful. And we wouldn't like that either if we were constantly on display and never had the option to take a step back.
Mhm.
So guaranteed sightings, we don't love. Not a good thing.
Nope.
No, the green flag to that is facilities making it very obvious we have these animals in this area. You may see, or you could have the opportunity to see. This is the kind of language that to me is, saying, yes, there's a good chance because they're here, but we're
Yeah.
not promising you anything.
Yeah, exactly. I am very passionate about that one. I do think there is absolutely there is nothing that should guarantee you to be able to see an animal. I even sometimes people ask me, I think because I'm very vocal about it, to kind of check facilities for them and like just see like, do you like this language? Like, is this what you would go for? And there was one I was looking at recently in Australia, which was you know what, I actually forget the name of the island, but it was one of the islands, may have been in Noosa. And they were saying um it was language to the effect of, we have so many koalas, you will see one. Don't worry, you are guaranteed a sighting. Now, I know those koalas were wild. I know they were from the language they were using. I still audibly gasped and was like, no. And it's just that language is quite triggering to me because I do think that like there is no way you can guarantee this if you have an ethical facility.
Yeah, 100% agreed. And
Yeah.
even if you can say they're abundant and there's a really high chance,
Yeah.
but if you make that promise and people pay for that promise, you have to deliver. And so if you have to deliver by goading an animal there who doesn't want to be there, that's kind of at that point what you've trapped yourself into having to do.
Yes, exactly. And that can lead to unethical behavior and like desperate guides who want to like make sure they're not having to refund
Exactly.
people. Yeah.
Exactly. Because the ones who suffer often, it's the people who are taking your tour. If the facility has promised it,
Mm.
then the people on that tour will say to their guide, I've been promised this. You need to
Yeah.
make it happen, and that's
Mm.
just terrible for everyone involved.
Yeah, for sure. I've been on calls like that where the guide's been sort of desperate to get us to the animals, and
Yeah,
you feel the need to reassure them, like, it's fine. I don't need to see. If we don't see them, we don't see them. Um,
exactly.
yeah, it's really, really important. I can't remember, I was going to say something else, but anyway, we can move on to the third one.
Sure. This one, it comes back a little bit to our conversation about fortress conservation.
Okay,
The red flag for me is absolutely zero acknowledgement or engagement in local community or in
that's a good one.
education. Yeah, education, community outreach, no indication of how the community in which the facility is set is involved in the work. I think that's a huge red flag because why are you coming along and just plumping yourself down in this community and saying we have nothing to do with them? You
Mm.
can often even see communities villainized, saying these animals are here because the people here are terrible. The people here don't treat any animals well. And I think this is such a dangerous rhetoric to get into and a
Yeah,
really problematic way for any facility to, showcase things to be like, hey, we're here and we're saving the day because everyone here is terrible. And that's just never the case. It's just not true. So my big green flags there. Oh, sorry, carry on.
no, I was just going to say, always education could be done rather than shaming. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's the green flag. The green flag is there is an effort to involve community. It's either a community funded project, which is amazing, that we love to see, or there is an emphasis on education. A lot of the ones that I've been to that have been my favorite ones, so much of the funding goes to bringing the schools to the facility to talk to the children about all the work being done there and the animals in the area. And, at that young age, really talking to people about these kinds of things. Or, some of the funding should be going back to helping create solutions to the human wildlife conflict in the area and actually listening to the people as to why this is a problem and making change about it. You should never go to a facility and be told the people here are terrible and therefore the animals are in trouble. It should always be this issue exists. This is how it's impacting both humans and animals, and this is how we're going to try and make a difference about it.
Yeah, I love what you say there that it affects both humans and animals because in human wildlife conflict, no one wins. Nobody wins. Like there's no one celebrating it. Like there was we were in when we were in Namibia, the San people there who are a very small community, they're down to I think it's like 400 in Southern Africa. It's very low numbers.
Very long.
But they were sort of villainized because they get by on hunting, and a
Mhm.
lot of the time they had been hunting. I think it's called an eland, which is like the biggest antelope in Africa, and it had gone to extinction in some parts of Namibia. But you look at that situation, you think, yeah, this animal is extinct or nearing extinction in these parts, but so are the people. Like 400 people of a tribe, and it's because they've been pushed out actually by farmers, often by white South African farmers, and not again not villainizing those particular people, but you have to look at it and see, well, no one's really winning. We could bring everybody in together, and
Yeah.
you're so right.
And you know what? A lot of communities that are hunting animals in this way, they're not hunting them because they want them to go extinct. And if they go extinct, that's actually a problem for them also.
They can't
And so
eat.
there is exactly. So there are conversations to be had here that involves everyone.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Um, and then the fourth one.
Okay, so my last big one, this is probably one that I am most passionate about. It's about transparency. So my biggest red flag is any kind of facility that does not want to answer your questions and that isn't transparent about where the animals have come from or what they're doing with them, what is the plan with them, what kind of, rehabilitation methods are you using? These are all standard questions that, in my opinion, you shouldn't even have to ask. I think the information to do with these kinds of questions should be on a facility website, right there, easy to see.
Yeah,
So, the green flag version of it might look like you go on a website and you get all the information about, oh, these elephants say are here at this sanctuary because this happened. And so we had to take them from this environment. And now they're here. They're going through this kind of rehabilitation. Our plan for them is,
yeah,
and that should be accessible and easy. And if you ask someone about that and they're cagey, they don't want to tell you. If they don't know, fine, but they should be able to direct you to someone who does know.
yes. That's a huge red flag. And I like the
Yeah.
corresponding green one is like you don't even need to ask for the information. I can we expand, this might get a bit deep, but can we expand a little bit on why that's a problem?
Well, it all really comes back to ethics washing.
Mhm.
Like I said, it relies on people not having information. So information should be abundant and accessible so we can make informed decisions. If you're not giving information, in my opinion, you're not giving it because you think doing so will cause someone to make the decision not to support you or
Mhm.
not to visit you, or because you are in some way aware that maybe it's not something you're proud of or not something that you think people will necessarily want to know or should be shared about.
Mhm.
And as I say, there's so many gray ethics areas when it comes to wildlife tourism. So yes, there are occasionally going to be some things where people will explain it to you and they might preface it with like, this is not our ideal situation,
Mhm.
but this is the case. We're hoping that within the next year, this will be the case instead. That's what we're working towards. That's transparency. That's understanding that maybe what they're doing currently isn't 100% perfect, but they're working on it and they're changing things. And they're still willing to give you the information because there's something happening about it.
Yeah.
And if
And
you're
they're
not
aware of
willing,
it.
exactly. And they should be. Nowhere is, like we said, being perfect so difficult,
Mhm.
especially with the funding issues. A lot of these places are aware there are things that they would like to be better at and would like to change. And
Yeah.
that's fine. We'd be open and honest about it because people need to be able to make their decisions. And you need to, as much as we're giving the animals the autonomy to not look at people all the time and do what they need to do, you need to give people the autonomy to act within a way that they are comfortable with and that they are proud of. And that means giving them the information and letting them make their own decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I understand it as well, we need to know where the animals have come from so that we can understand that it is a true conservation facility. It's not just somewhere that's kind of taking animals from an environment forcibly to make money from tourists, right?
Exactly. Yes, there are a lot of issues of, say, baby animals being captured from the wild, of animals being purchased and, treated more like commodities. There are situations, particularly I discovered since being in Southeast Asia, where rescue facilities do buy animals. And that's not necessarily a, you cannot do that. But, it's good to know exactly why that happened and where they
Yeah.
came from and what money was changing hands why. And,
Yeah,
you just want to know, oh, this is actually a rescued animal. This is not an animal that they just thought, you'll look good in my facility. I'm going to take
exactly. Yeah, oh, that's depressing. But yeah, I I
you.
agree. Like sometimes you need, it's okay. Like we can all understand that sometimes an animal would be in a situation whereby the owner would not part with it unless it was paid for.
Yeah,
We can all understand that, but it needs to be transparent to the general public who are also giving their money to this that no, no, don't worry, your money will not go on to these people further. It was just that in that instance, it was a much better solution for the animal to get them out of that situation by whatever means necessary.
yeah. And it's we could do a whole podcast on, the changing hands of money when it comes to rescue and everything, because it's such a tricky, difficult situation. And,
Yeah.
for anyone listening, I would just say as an individual, never pay to buy wildlife to remove them from a situation because it can so easily feed back into a cycle of wildlife being captured and put on display because good meaning, well-intentioned people buy them. So I would just put that out there as part of this conversation. Facilities operate on a very different level and, under different circumstances to individuals.
Oh yes, absolutely. With local knowledge as well. Like, please don't buy animals. Please don't buy monkeys. Don't buy any animals to get them off out of situations. You don't have enough knowledge for that. Um,
Exactly.
Goodness me. Didn't even think we'd have to say that, but it's good that you did.
It's
Um,
always things out, you know?
yeah, I know well intent like, the road to hell is paved with good intentions kind of thing. I do think there's a lot of people really wanting to do good, um, and not necessarily achieving it. I wanted to share, if you don't mind, just an example of because we've talked a lot about like perfection not being achievable. And I have an example where I was a little uncomfortable at a facility, but I know that they were doing good things. Do you mind if I share that? Um,
Absolutely.
so it was at Hwangi, or Wangi, I'm not sure on the pronunciation, in Zimbabwe. which is National Conservation Area. It's a great park. Like the guides are really, really good. And just outside that park is a painted dog conservation sanctuary. And it's a great place. It's doing amazing things like educating the general public, a lot of the kids as well, because painted dogs in Zimbabwe are really, really rare. Like I think they're very endangered, if not going extinct. And what often happens, it's a series of events, like could be hunters, poachers, could be just like they're not very well adapted to their environment, unfortunately. And they can't survive outside of a pack. So if anything happens to a cub, it's pretty much a goner. Um, so the sanctuary is doing like really, really good things, but they had a painted dog there in a large enclosure who was visibly distressed. And when we got there, she was pacing, pacing, pacing. Like everybody in the group knew it, even those of us who weren't especially well educated on wildlife conservation. And we asked, what is going on with that dog? Like, why is she so distressed? And they said, yeah, she's the only one we've got at the facility right now. Unfortunately, she was rescued like as a young adult, quite injured, and she came in with another adult that was part of her pack, and that adult died. And now we can't do anything with her. We are in a very unfortunate situation where we can't rehabilitate her because she will die and she's endangered. We just need to wait until we get another cub that we could potentially introduce to her, but we are also not hoping for that because that would not be a good situation for the other cub either.
Yeah.
Which I thought, like, we all left that, everybody left that sanctuary kind of like, what do we do? Like, what can they even do? There is no
Hmm.
answer. And it was very interesting because it got the whole group talking about like, are they doing the right thing? Should they just release her and let her take her chances, you know?
It's honestly so interesting. This is essentially what I wrote my master's thesis about, but with
Really?
primates. It's this, difficulty that sanctuaries have, firstly, with accurately assessing quality of life of an animal.
Yeah,
A huge part of what comes into that is future prediction of, how difficult it is to know how long is an animal going to be in this situation. And if we wait it out, is their overall quality of life in the future going to be better?
yeah,
It's almost impossible to know. And it's just so difficult in terms of endangered species with individual versus collective value.
yeah,
And I'm very much a person where every individual life matters, and it absolutely breaks my heart for any individual's quality of life to be disregarded.
mm,
But I can understand and see many conservation perspectives in which you have to also take a collective approach and try and understand what's giving us the best chance to both research and maintain a species as a whole. And there's so many things to weigh up, and it also can't be a quick decision.
yeah.
So
And she was,
yeah, it's so hard.
it was impossible. She was a female of breeding age. And should they find a male
Mhm.
of breeding age, that's a huge opportunity, for a very endangered species, and they could then potentially rehabilitate the pack.
Mhm.
Um, and they said, when we were asking questions, they were very like, yeah, we're very distressed for her. Like they weren't heartless people by any means. Like it was very much like a difficult conversation for them to have. You could tell they'd considered it like from every angle. And it really struck me. It was like, this is hard for them.
And you know what? It should be. And that's
Yeah,
also how you're talking to people who have their hearts in the right place.
yeah. Everybody in that situation, I think, is struggling with their emotions. But so let's
Mhm.
round this off on a nice positive note. You've obviously been to so many sanctuaries. Like, I mean, I'm jealous in a way, but I also like I know that you're doing like such good work on this. Can you give us like a few examples of where it's been, if not perfect, just amazing, and you've looked at it and thought this is what wildlife conservation should be?
Yeah, I mean, like I say, it's my standards and ideals when it comes to ethics is stupidly high, and I've never been a single place in my life where every tiny little thing I've been like perfect on the spot. I'd probably have to somehow start my own place, and then I'd still struggle to make everything like that. But I've definitely been to places where I leave feeling, firstly, that I've learned something new. That is a huge one for me. I love to learn from people who are working in the field, and I leave feeling inspired. And I think that's the feeling you should get when you go to these places. It shouldn't just necessarily be a case of like, well, that was cool. I like touched an animal, that's
Yeah.
like whatever. And you want to leave feeling like, whoa, I really got an appreciation of what this animal is, what the struggles they're facing as a species. Like that's such an amazing thing to leave with, feeling like I love this animal and now I want to do something about it.
Yeah.
And I would say the times that I felt that most, I went to a gibbon rehabilitation project in Phuket.
Cool.
And Phuket is known for unethical wildlife tourism.
Mhm.
It's a hot spot in so many ways. And then there's this very small, in a way, facility that is by no means absolute perfection, but that has so much love for the gibbons there.
Mm.
They spoke, well, this is actually one of the places I went where we got to make enrichment, which was amazing. So we got a little tour. We saw the facilities that they were working with and some of the gibbons that are in rehabilitation.
Mm.
And then we sat around with our guide, we made enrichment, and we got the chance to just hear from him. And, he viewed these gibbons as his brothers and his sisters. He adored them. They're his family. And he was so candid about all the struggles they had over 10 years before they managed to have a successful release of a gibbon
Wow.
and the process or everything that went into that and learning from that. And I could just feel the pain from him from all of the failed attempts as well. And then the love and excitement that was coming from him for all the ones that everything they'd learned from that and that things were starting to work out. And, when we went to go and deliver the enrichment and we saw how he delivers it and he told us all about their behaviors as eating it, there was so much like passion and joy coming from him. And he knew all these gibbons individually and
Mm.
their stories and their personalities and what they needed. And it was just like I could have listened to him talk all day. It was
Wow.
beautiful and it was so inspiring. And we learned so much about why they're there and the problems that they face within tourism elsewhere. And it was so cool. I've been like wildly obsessed with gibbons ever since. I literally, at the start of this year, went to Laos and went on a 3-day trek in the jungle just so I could hear wild gibbons because I went to that experience and fell in love with them.
Yeah. That's so cool. I mean, this is the thing, like to come, I mean, you were already wildlife obsessed, but to come away and be like, I'm obsessed with this particular kind of wildlife now.
It's
I love
cool.
that. That's so, so
Yeah.
sweet. Can you tell us, I didn't ask this before, but when it comes to enrichment, could you just clarify like how it differs from feeding?
So enrichment is essentially creating something that is promoting the animal's natural behaviors.
Hmm.
So in captivity, obviously animals often lose the need to say forage or like hunt. They lose like prey drive because all their food is just given to them.
Yeah.
So enrichment, it doesn't have to be food. Enrichment can be games, puzzles, anything that is sort of created with the intention of encouraging the animal to forage or to hunt. So, for example, one of the things you might make for the gibbons is you'll take banana leaves and create food for them and wrap the foods up in the banana leaves and vines and make it a bit like a pass the parcel style.
Mhm.
So when it's given, they can tell from, a scent that there's food in here, but have to actually use their hands to open it and to like pull things out, tear things apart, really forage and dig in order to get what's in there. It's not just here's a piece of fruit.
Yeah.
It's here's a challenge. Keep yourself mentally stimulated and also keep all of the physical skills there as well.
Yeah, because if you just hand them a banana, they're going to associate you with bananas, right? They're going to be like human
Yeah.
equals food.
Yeah,
And they don't want to
exactly.
do
Whereas
it.
enrichment is all about giving them the chance to do what they need to do in order to still have also the abilities if they were released into the wild. They need to know how to forage. So we've got to make sure they still have to practice that sometimes.
Yeah, 100%. What do we need to know about gibbons?
That they're the coolest. But actually, my favorite thing that I learned about gibbons is that gibbons are neither monkeys nor apes. They
Mhm.
are what's called smaller body apes.
Oh.
So, for anyone who doesn't know, monkeys are small and have tails generally, and apes are like orangutans and chimps and gorillas. They're a lot bigger, closer to humans, and they do not have tails. And gibbons are like that sweet spot in the middle, where they're
Aw.
like not quite ape, not quite monkey. They're often called lesser apes, but I think collectively everyone has decided that's mean. Smaller bodied apes is a more common term now.
Wow, that's so cute. When we did gorilla trekking in Uganda, as you know, but we
Mhm.
also on a whim decided in Tanzania that we would go to Gombe, which is I used to live in Tanzania, so we know it quite well. And this is one of the areas that is quite like not as well known, but it's actually where Jane Goodall. I was going to say Jane Fonda, so embarrassed. Is where
I have to leave. I can't be part of this anymore.
I'm not even going to cut that. I'm just going to leave it in there, like really embarrassed, but it's fine.
You're talking to a monkey girl.
Is where Jane Goodall started actually observing chimpanzees. So, and
Yeah.
she had it was really cool because she had this feeding station. I don't know if you've been, sorry, I don't want to tell you something you already
I
know.
haven't been, no, I'd love to, but no.
It's awesome. She has this feeding station that she's kind of immortalized as like, I made a mistake here. And it was where they used to feed the chimpanzees so they could bring them to observe them, which they no longer do. And yeah, she's got loads of information on like chimpanzees and like how you can observe them. And when you trek, there's obviously no guarantee you'll see them. You trek through, and then if you find them, they are with researchers 24/7. And you
Mhm.
see this troop of chimpanzees, and they're human. Like I don't know how to describe it, but their behavior is human.
Amazing. It's literally, I mean, the first primates that I worked with were baboons. And I remember being told the minute you see a baboon's hand, your life will never be the same again. And that's exactly how it was. Because it was this little human hand, you know, it looked so similar and it hits you completely that like we're part of the animal kingdom.
Yeah, we are one of the same. They told us a really funny story with the gorillas where they're silverbacks. The silverbacks are obviously very imposing. He'd taken a group on this walking tour. Like they basically walk through, see the gorillas, and the silverback had just taken a shine to one of the girls, one of the women, and
Interesting.
followed them, and the whole troop of gorillas had just come. I think they're troops. They'd just come back with them because this silverback was obsessed with this girl and like wouldn't leave her alone. And the guide was saying like it was terrifying. It was absolutely
Hmm.
terrifying. But what a human response to just like be
That's
all
so
shy and like
interesting.
so
Yeah, because I
interesting.
just wonder what it was exactly about this person. Like, what did it trigger? What did they want? I want to know. I want to know
I know.
everything.
And it's probably not looks, because I don't know, but well, I
I
don't know.
mean, it could be, a lot of, say, ex-pet primates that I've worked with, if this is, sorry, a little bit of a darker for our happy ending, but if they've, say, been a pet and had a terrible experience with a person who wore glasses, if their keeper wears glasses one day, I don't like them. Like it can really trigger a like response and a memory. So, it's the same. I've worked with some monkeys who don't like blonde people.
Yeah.
So it's like there's so many weird little things that I just want to know where it all comes from.
Well, I don't know. Anyway, apparently he like followed this. You normally get an hour with the gorillas, and he apparently
Mhm.
followed this group all the way back, and they got a good like 3 hours trekking back with these gorillas, and then had to leave them. But so interesting. Right, I'm going to finish off and stop talking about gorillas. So, Connie, I want to know a bit about Project Wild. Yeah.
So my current passion, Project Wild, it's a business that I've just started setting up, and it's really to do with helping people connect with wildlife and all other kinds of animals as well in the most ethical way possible.
Mhm.
So everything that we've just spoken about ethics washing and it being difficult to know what facilities are doing good and what aren't, I want to make it as easy as possible for people to connect with the facilities that are doing good.
Yeah.
I don't want them to necessarily have to do hours and hours or days and days of research and be questioning and be unsure if the places they're going and the things they're supporting are good or not.
Yeah.
I want to be creating a database of facilities that I personally visited and can endorse and can be transparent about what they do and let people know if you go here, this is what you're supporting and what you'll experience. And so Project Wild, it's not just about that connection, but it's just about making the world of wildlife and animal behavior more accessible. It's partnering new facilities, it's making accessible education, and it's bringing campaigns, international campaigns about wildlife and animals to your doorstep, putting it all in one place. So if you want to visit animals in ecotourism, if you want to support from your home, if you want to get involved politically, it's like your one-stop shop to see how you can do that in as easy and few steps as possible.
That is amazing. That is so necessary. I can't tell you how many times I've been asked for this exact resource, And I have a few things I can give them, but nothing
Yeah.
like this. Amazing.
Yeah, it's still, it's a baby. It's still, actually, this was just before we're filming this, my first full week dedicated to doing it full time.
Yeah.
So, it's in its growing stages, but I think that's also really exciting because it's only up from here.
It is, it is. I mean, the first week of working on your own project is always equally scary and exciting. So I'm sure
Yeah.
you're feeling super buzzed about it, but I mean, that sounds amazing. So that's presumably what you're working on at the moment. Are you working on anything else?
Honestly, I've now decided taking all my passion, that and my rescue puppy.
Yeah. And where can people find you?
So you can find me on Instagram at connie.needham,
Mhm.
and you can find my website is projectwild.uk. And also, actually, now that I've entered the big world of business, you can also find me on LinkedIn as Connie
Yay.
Needham.
Amazing. They will be in the episode description. And I'll also have your Instagram just down the bottom and your website up at the top. So Connie, thank you so much. You've been an absolutely amazing guest. This has been the Sustainable Travel Podcast. You can find us on Spotify and also on YouTube, or you can visit our website, which is www.thattravel.co.uk/the-sustainable-travel-podcast. You can join our Facebook group, which is Sustainable Travel Tips Group. And you can also leave us a review on Spotify, which we would very much appreciate. So yeah, that's been us. Thank you so much, Connie.
Thank you. That was great.